Good evening, everybody. Happy 4th of July Eve, per se. Let's drop some comments. Let us know you're here. Don, how are you doing tonight? Oh, Don, you're muted. Sorry. Let's try that again, Don. I muted you.
Oh, okay. What are your 4th of July plans, Ryan?
I'm going to spend the best holiday of the year, I might add. I think I'm going to go to Kings Island for the 4th. I always love their 4th of July show. And they do such a good job. So I will be in town this weekend, and I think I'm going to do 4th of July at Kings Island. What about you?
I am going to be heading to Tennessee tomorrow morning and going to spend the 4th of July at Dollywood. They're reopening Blazing Fury outside of the train. That is the Dollywood Express. That is my favorite attraction at Dollywood. So looking forward to riding that again. So I'll be spending, most of the weekend in Tennessee. My wife and I, we absolutely love it down there. So, Dollywood and some of the different restaurants. We'll go to the island. So if you're at Dollywood on the 4th, look for me.
Yeah, Dollywood is so fun, and it's like I recently made a new friend who may or may not be in the comments right now, and they've never been to Dollywood, and I really want to take them because I want to take them on Blazing Fury, the Dollywood Express, to see the blacksmiths, to see the shows, to meet Dolly's family. There's so much to do at Dollywood.
There is. You know what else I get to do? When I ride the Dollywood Express, I'll be able to get some photos and video of construction of their 2026 new attraction.
Yeah.
$50 million attraction, by the way. $50 million.
50 million. That's we got to think Orion was 30 million. That was pre-inflation though. So Orion today would probably cost like $38 million.
Yeah,
this
is their biggest investment ever. So more and more clues are coming out about that. The announcement should probably come at some point later this month or maybe early August.
Yeah. The Wide Weird World of Frankenberry said Blazing Fury is one of my favorite too. Don, that was my first coaster. That's a heck of a first coaster.
It is. It's it's one of those rides. It's fun. It's memorable. There's a backstory to it, so there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, I always enjoy the aspect. By the way, so thanks to Frankenberry for those of you who saw the bumper at the end of the show. He's the one who produced and wrote and did everything for that song that plays us out for that 20 seconds, and it's awesome. So
yeah, I've gotten a lot of compliments about that. Saw some people at Kings Island the other day, and they said, "Love your new outro."
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of good compliments and stuff. So Frankenberry, we may be coming to the well again for you. We got our first protester. KDR said, "Where is Noah? Give us Noah." And she did it in all caps. So security, remove KDR.
Yeah, I like the little segments we do with Noah. We got to do a few more of those, Ryan.
Well, I was actually thinking about inviting him on the stream. I just kind of forgot to, but he's been in the Bubbles show twice now.
He's been in it?
Yeah, he's been in it. Like, not hosting it. He's not David Yang.
No, but he's called up on the stage?
Yeah, twice. Frankenberry said, "I'm expecting they'll probably end up doing the same thing with Blazing Fury as Silver Dollar City did with theirs." I don't think so, because I think this is the alternative.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It won't be the same thing. But I'll have a full report. I'll definitely be publishing a piece on my blog after I get to experience the refurbished attraction.
So Logan Lipper gifted 5 Tower Topics memberships. I don't know how that works. I've heard of gifting memberships, but I don't know what it does. So Logan, if you know, first of all, thank you. I imagine that costed you money, but explain that to us. I'd love to hear what that means. Frankenberry said, "Thanks, Logan." I think that he donated a membership to Frankenberry, which is very nice. The coaster enthusiast said, "Has Ryan further prepared his office themed haunt?" Office themed haunt? I'm going to do a Severance themed haunt at Horror Nights. That's what I want to do. Have you guys seen Severance? I'd love to hear that. Don, do you ever watch Severance?
I have not.
The Loop said, I did Six Flags St. Louis today. I've been spoiled by Kings Island wood coaster maintenance. Hope it was not a sneak peek of things to come. That's not good.
Not good to hear. No. I do like that park though.
Yeah.
I think it has good upside potential.
So it looks like the system is highlighting Mandy 1983 for being a member for 8 months. Says, glad to be proud of this crew, part of this crew. We are so proud to have you as a Prestige member. Thank you so much, Miss Mandy. Logan said, 5 people get a silver membership for a month. I don't know if you get anything from it, though. Well, it doesn't matter. So long as you can get more people watching the live streams and stuff. Yeah, we don't really care about that, but we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have a meetup soon, too, for everybody that, we'll pick a day, give everybody enough advance notice, but we'll do it at Kings Island. And we'll have a day that, maybe we'll do it during Grand Carnival. We'll all get to watch the parade together and ride some rides and just have a good time.
SVT Cobra said, do you think they're adding a new dark ride where Boo Blasters is? I don't know. That's something.
I'm thinking the eyeball emoji would be good for right now.
Yeah. Asia M said, Don Ryan, were there any planned expansions to Kings Island that were scrapped in the last 10 to 15 years?
Usually there's ideas on the board and then you settle on one and you move forward with it. So I haven't, especially during my years there wasn't anything we didn't do that we were looking to do. So, I know going back into the, like the 70s and the 80s, they pretty much did what they were planning. So it's just, there's always a lot of discussion. You never get to where you finalize something and then it just gets scrapped. That typically hasn't happened. There's been some live entertainment shows and stuff that you're planning to do, and then as budgets and that come out, you have to cut something and it doesn't make the cut. But other than something big like an expansion of the park or a new ride or something, that typically happens as expected.
Medic 302 said, anyone else notice that the clock on Ryan's wall never moves? Yeah, it's called continuity. That's why you take the batteries out of it. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I use my phone and I've got an Apple Watch and everything, so I've got no shortage of like a chroma. I've got no shortage of time. So when that thing ran out of batteries, I just never replaced it, and it's probably been 5 years or so.
I'm going to be moving my podcast office to a different location, Ryan. So in the next, I'd say about the next month, I'll have a different look.
Cool. Michael Rupert said, how do you define a coaster credit? What's the difference between the Racer Lightning Run at Hershey and the Racer at Kennywood?
Well, they're different parks, so you count those as a credit.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that, and this is going to stir some things up, but I'm somebody that, when I look at a ride like the Racer or Racer 75 at King's Dominion, I count that as one credit. Some people will count those as two, but I always go back to the name of the ride is singular, the Racer 75. It's not the Racers. So I count it as one credit, but, if you want to count it as two, there's nobody's stopping you.
Yeah. Chris Wagner says, Six Flags Over Texas, my home park. They've been doing a lot of much needed upgrades. I was excited when they announced the merger. Well, it's definitely worked for Legacy Six Flags.
It's going to be good for Six Flags Over Texas. Some really good things are happening there. A friend of mine worked with them for 17 seasons. They were recently named the park manager there, Mark Boyer. He'll do some really good things there.
Yeah, plus you got a new executive chef.
Yes, we do.
That's true. So the coaster enthusiast said, scrap concepts were Jungle Cruise and Oktoberfest, Singing Mushrooms, wooden coaster on Swan Lake, an Intamin space diver, bobsled, an inverting swinging ship in the Vortex plot.
There wasn't, you can't really say like the thing for Swan Lake that was a scrap project because it never made it past just sitting in a room talking about it. It never was something that was they were going to move forward with it and then decided not to do it.
Yeah. Jungle Cruise and Oktoberfest. Does that ring a bell to you at all?
No.
Ribs and bacon. That is the username of the
I
day.
love that. I love that.
Here's an
Ribs
odd
and bacon.
question. Ribs and bacon.
That sounds like you could have a podcast off of that too.
I know. Some guy named Ribs and some dude named Bacon, and they make a podcast together about Kings Island. Would you be Ribs or Bacon, Don?
I think I would go for bacon.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I like both. I think I like Bacon better than Ribs, but
well, you're a big bacon fan. I'm a big bacon fan. That's why I went with that. I like bacon. I mean, I love ribs, but I think that would be a great name for a podcast. It really would.
Here's an odd question: did the sales of Vortex track pieces meet or beat expectations?
It met. I mean, we knew exactly how many pieces we had, and they were all sold. So yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we were going to be able to do with it. You would have liked to have had even more available, but it just wasn't possible. And those were manufactured, in terms of putting it together and how it was presented, and that when you purchased it. The merchandise director, did those at home. He's just at home watching TV and putting all those together for everybody.
Yeah, sitting there watching possibly Severance. I know it was before Severance, but still. The Jungle Cruise was one of the heavily worked on concepts before the 1972 opening that was sadly scrapped. That's interesting. I didn't know about that. Lack Ray, thanks for being a Prestige member, Lack Ray. You guys remember the Star Trek walkthrough? I do remember that. I was young, but I do remember that.
Yes, I remember it.
I would have appreciated it more as an adult. I do like that era of Star Trek. Like the new stuff is like a little too like pew pew and boomy and stuff, but that age of Star Trek, I do like.
I did the walkthrough, but I will confess I've never seen anything with Star Trek. Never seen an episode or anything, movie, whatever it is. Never saw it. TV show.
I'll give you a required watching list. You should see when the Starship Enterprise visits Kings Island. It's a crossover, kind of like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, and I've not seen Star Wars either, so that was a question coming up. I've not seen that either.
I've seen Star Wars. I'm not a fan of Star Wars. I think it's boring. So now our viewership's going to drop. Flugel Preppers Garage and Garden said, "I've been a Kings Island."
These are some great names tonight, aren't they?
They're better than the names we came up with. Tower Topics, that was a stupid name. We should have been Ribs and Bacon. I've been a Kings Islander since 1975, and that was my first trip in a baby stroller. The first visit I remember was the time the Beast first opened. It was a line back through the entire park. Even when I was a kid, I remember the line would go into Rivertown pretty often.
It would go into Rivertown, or it would wrap around, like right now where you see the Diamondback splashdown, so around Swan Lake, and would come up toward the Eiffel Tower. So yeah, there were some back in 79, 80, 81, 82. I mean, there were some days where that line was pretty long. Now, when it first opened in 79, you'd hear people, I waited 6 hours, 8 hours. That didn't happen. 3 hours was kind of the max, but it only was running with one train the first couple of weekends too. So there was that. That's why the line was as long as it was.
Yeah. Don, can you read well enough to read this question? Because this question's for me, so I think it's appropriate. If not,
Ryan, have you made, what's it say? River Racers? Have you rode River Racers?
Yes. Right? So KDR said, Ryan, have you rode River Racers? I heard it's amazing. No, I have not ridden River Racers, but I do appreciate your enthusiasm. I understand that KDR is a big fan and thinks that it's a real hit with the fans, but I appreciate it.
There's been a lot of mixed reviews about it. I mean, it's a nice complimentary ride, but it's not I wouldn't call it a star attraction.
Well, Miss Mandy, we will get to your comment. The cool thing about water coasters, though, is like if you got Orion and you weren't happy with it, you're screwed because you're not getting another Giga coaster. But potentially, you could get another water coaster. I mean, Holiday World is 3.
You could get a legitimate water coaster. There's still a lot of debate whether this is a water coaster because, after all, you're carrying your rafts and everything up to the top, and it has a water coaster element in it. But for the most part, it's a slide.
Yeah. So Miss Mandy, 1983, said, my husband and I visited both Buc-ee's locations in Kentucky, and we are planning for a mini Buc-ee's tour of Tennessee this September.
I like that. I'm going to be hitting 2 Buc-ee's tomorrow. I'll be hitting the one in Richmond, Kentucky, and the one off exit 407 in Sevierville, Tennessee.
Jacob Does Everything said, will they sell bat track slices when they remove it? Did they sell King to Ka slices?
I don't remember seeing that. I hope the bat is not removed for several years. It still runs well. I mean, there would be no reason to do that other than you're just looking to make cuts. So I know that the King to Ka was kind of problematic in that, needed a lot of work. So you could look at that as a reason that they did it. But when it comes to the bat, I think anything at Kings Island, don't remove it if it's reliable and guests still enjoy it. Just, let it be.
Onion 742, not to be confused with Orion 742, said, do you think there's any chance Kings Island updates Boo Blasters in the near future? I wrote Kings Dominion's Boo Blasters this past week, and it was far better than our Boo Blasters.
Yeah. King's Dominion's better. Carowinds is better. The one at Kings Island does need some updates. So of the 3, it's number 3. But love the one at King's Dominion and Carowinds.
Yeah. Medic 302, Don, I highly recommend Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Well, the problem with that is, to watch like Star Trek or that, it would come on the same time that like ESPN, MLB Network, the Reds game, so there's a lot of conflicts that I would have to watch it.
I know you're making a joke, Don, but there's a good chance that both ESPN and MLB TV will be gone in the next year because neither of them are in great shape. So if that happens, will you finally watch Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
Well, I mean, there's so many other, I'm always watching some kind of sports show or a game, so, then you got the NFL season, then there's the hockey season. There's, in the spring, you've got the things like the NFL draft and stuff. So, I mean, just for me, my time is when I have any free time, it's dedicated to watching, all those different shows that are out there. So to fit in something like Star Wars or Star Trek, a TV series, those are hard to get in. Now there's a couple that I did watch, The Lincoln Lawyer was one that I liked. Ted Lasso was one that I liked, and I was able to, I worked them around, the other things that I watch.
So Don's not kidding. Okay, here's a funny. I don't think I told this story. So we shared a hotel room when we went to Hollywood Nights at Holiday World, and I remember like we were both just trying to just perusing the TV to find something to fall asleep to or whatever, and there was some I don't know Division III baseball game, college baseball game on, and we just put it on for background noise or whatever. We woke up in the morning and they were doing doggy races. And when the trumpeters came out, instead of going, they played How Much Is That Doggy in the Window instead.
I remember that, yeah.
And then what was the other sport that they were playing that was absurd, that we didn't understand?
I don't know.
They kept on referring to it as ESPN 8, the Ocho. And I don't know if they're joking or not, because that's from Dodgeball.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Croquet or something like that. I don't know.
We did watch cricket for a little bit. It was the best
cricket.
channel.
That was it. Cricket. Yeah. No, I'm either I'm theme parks or sports. 320 or what is the thing you say? 24/7, 365.
The Loop said, "What are the odds the Family Thrill attraction has become a bar at this point?" Non-zero.
What are the chances that it could become? I don't know.
What are the chances that they've scrapped it and decided let's put a bar there?
I could see that.
Nick Sutton said, "What do you think will happen to Six Flags America's water coaster?"
I think they'll just put it up for sale.
I think it'll meet the business end of a backhoe, personally.
Yeah, some of those are not. I mean, they're older. They're not in great shape. So, I think if they might try to sell it to some real small, park or something. But I don't think the future's bright for a lot of their attractions.
Yeah, Frankenberry said, I'm gonna have to go see one of these Buc-ee's. Everywhere I turn, people are talking about it. I've never seen
You
one.
have to go see Bucky's. You do. It's life changing. I can tell you that. Um, you will love the. I mean, you think you're going to it just like another gas station. It's almost like its own little amusement park in there, but the food is phenomenal. Um, I think that good merchandise selection. It's just like addicting. You go in, you're not planning to do anything, but maybe get a quick snack, get something to drink, and you walk out and you've spent $331.
Oh no, Jeff Kirby. Well, I'm gonna drop the name off. I guess everyone doxed, but hello from the field reporter. So he is here.
Okay.
Noah is here. He's in the comments. So hey, Noah.
Hi, Noah.
He said I didn't make it. Jeff Kirby said I didn't make it to be on the live in time. I'm sorry, Noah, but I was just telling everybody that you got to be in the bubble show twice, or you and your sister did, or something like that. That's pretty cool.
That's great.
James Johnson said, having been to Six Flags America, I don't see anything being saved. What's funny is you and I did an episode on like what could come to Kings Island.
Yeah, we did.
We thought we were going to have a whole episode of, this could. And then it's like, it's all crap except for these two things.
These are these two things as possibilities, yeah. And then the one we talked about, like Haley's comment, I was told that hadn't operated all year.
Yeah, so it would still be cheaper than buying a new ride because that's not a complicated device, but
no.
All right. Coaster Turtle said, buy or sell. All parks outside Disney and Universal and top 10 highest attendance parks in North America will be closed by 2100. That's such a long time from now.
I'm selling. They're going to be there for the long haul.
Well, he said all, but at the same time, like it's quite possible that what if the dynamics in the market change and these big expensive, like, you got to spend $100 million minimum on a new ride. Like that's just not feasible anymore. So I don't know. 2100 is a long way off, but let's hope that, Kings Island and other parks are there for generations. Miss Mandy, 1983. Grand Carnival is coming up.
It's going to be interesting to see what that looks like.
I agree.
Years where it's been really good. We've had years where it was watered down a little bit. I think the one in 2023 had been watered down, but it rebounded a little bit last year, and was closer to what it had been in 2021. So I'm looking forward to it. I just hope that they're not doing it just to do it, and it shows, if you know what that means. So I'm hoping that it's a really good event.
Yeah. Jacob Does Everything said, will Monster or Viking Fury reopen?
Monster, I think we'll know in about 2 weeks if there's any progress or anything with a part that was supposedly shipped in the fall that was going to take until July to get here. Viking Fury, I heard it needs a part, something under the boat. So I don't know. It might be one of those things where they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, it's going into July, let's just let it go, and they'll wait till next year to do something. So it's hard to tell with that. Hope not. It's a fun ride. A lot of guests like it.
I think the kids would be devastated if they got rid of it, but I don't think that necessarily rules it out.
Yeah, I don't know that it means it's going to go. I just think that they would wait to buy, pay for the part because they're, maybe they're not in a position to purchase that part right now.
Miss Mandy, 1983 said, budget cuts were very evident during Winterfest. Well, boy, do you got something coming this year, I bet.
I thought last year. Yeah, I thought Winterfest, in terms of how it looked last year, was the best that it had looked. Now, yeah, it was cut down from the number of shows from previous years, but I thought, the park looked beautiful. The lights and everything, and the shows they did have were really good. But I do think that, there will be some more cuts this year, and hopefully it doesn't, get to that point to where it really does impact the experience. I always thought when they had like 18 shows, they were, touting, and then 16 shows. That was still too many shows for an event that was open for, 5 hours. You're not going to be able to see every show. If you're going to get something to eat, you want to ice skate, you want to ride a couple of rides, and that there's just not enough time. So as long as you have 5 or 6, I think, shows, entertainment offerings, I think that's a good enough number for Winterfest.
Yeah, but when they said 18 shows, they included a lot of stuff that I would not count as a show.
Right.
So I think that there have been really 5 must-do things at Winterfest since the beginning. And a lot of the rest of the stuff's like ancillary. Jack Larimore said, think they will run out of ice at Grand Carnival. See, Jack, I wouldn't have taken your question, but you're also a Beagle person, because the question doesn't make any sense, because they'll certainly be out of ice before Grand Carnival starts at 4:00. Let's not be silly here.
Yeah, they'll have stands that won't have ice. They'll have stands that won't have the Coke products. They'll be out. There'll be stands that have the Coke products, but they're flat. Then they'll have a couple of stands where everything's the way it's supposed to be.
Chris Wagner said, buy or sell concerts ever coming back to KI. I guess buy means they are and sell means they are not.
I'm going to, he says, ever coming back. I think that that will be a time where they come back. You have to have somebody that's really dedicated to that. And you can't just stick your foot in the water. You have to jump in, be committed to it. If you wanted to have concerts there at this time next summer, you have to be talking to these acts today, and getting it lined up. So I do think the potential's there, but they, the last few times they've tried it, it was just stick their foot in the water and see if people come, instead of, they wait until like April or May and then let's put a concert in July, and it's slim pickings on who's available at that point in time. So to get the really good acts in that, you got to act, and reach out to them and get them booked, 10, 12 months in advance.
Do you think that Kings Island's not going to get a person for that? That just doesn't make any sense. But do you think that like a regional or a corporate person could book it for all the parks that still have their stage?
Yeah. You could have that. Yeah, that could definitely be done. Carowinds did a nice job with it. Last year they had, several different concerts in that. They had somebody that was committed to it, and it worked.
KDR said, I love Winterfest. So Winterfest is my favorite time of year at Kings Island. That's my favorite event. I think it's Kings Island at its best. Even when Winterfest, like at times when it feels like, was cut a little bit short, it's still like the park looks the best. It's the best shows. It's got just enough rides open. Is Winterfest your favorite, Don, or are you like a summer? Because you got your racer now.
Well, I mean, I'm somebody that, I'm not a fan of the cold weather, so I prefer to go in the summer and that. But no, I think when you're talking about the different things that the park does, whether it's Halloween Haunt, Winterfest, Grand Carnival, and that, I think that Winterfest by far and away is the best event that Kings Island does now, and I think it's the best thing that they've really ever have done. Going back to the first run of Winterfest.
The Loop said, are you guys planning on doing a video on what KI could get from California's Great America? We weren't, but we will.
We could do that, but I think it still has, they're saying now it's going to at least run through 2027. So, we're 2 years off there. But we'll get to that point to where we'll do an episode on that when the time comes.
I still think that there's a thought experiment to be done, because I don't think the landscape's going to change greatly in the next 2 or 3 years as to, what would be valuable, what would make sense. Now, granted, like if we say like, oh, they're single rail RMC, like that would be great, and then we get one of those, obviously that would mute that out. But I think that looking at it as a whole and like kind of making a wish list, I don't think that information is going to change a whole lot in that time. So I think we can do that whenever. That might be a good like off-season thing.
Yeah. That's a nice park. I spent some time out there. I was the one that announced that Gold Striker was coming. I was sent out to do the media event for that, and was just really, really enjoyed the park, what it had to offer, just the atmosphere and everything. And, I wish the fate was going to be a little bit different, but, we know it's on, 1 or 2 more years, and that's going to be it.
Our field reporter said, I think the monster may not reopen with the way budget cuts are.
Well, they promised. They said it was going to happen in July.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Attractions Group podcast. Never heard of it. So shout out to David. He said any show changes coming for Winterfest. I haven't
Not
heard anything.
not that I've heard. I think that what they had last year is what you'll see this year. You'll see something in the Best House. You'll see the Tinkers show will return in the Kings Island Theater. I think they'll have, obviously something on the bandstand, and they'll have a couple of, the Mistletones will be back, and then a couple of maybe, roving type entertainment. And I think, it'll match up with what they had last year.
Alec S said, "How different do you think Haunt will look this year?" Possibly substantially.
I think it'll be pretty good. We know that there's a new attraction going into the old Blackout building. Like Productions is doing it. We think that that's going to be pretty good. Possibility, because they were in the building, Like Productions, they were in the Crypt building, that maybe something goes in there and you get two new mazes. So we'll see. But I'm excited about Hunt. I think it's gonna be a pretty good event this year.
SVT Cobra said, "Don and Ryan, honest question. Why don't you guys wear Tower Topics t-shirts when you're at the park when you visit?"
We have done that. Hey, anybody notice I have a Tower Topics Hawaiian shirt on?
Here, I'll take this down so they can see it better. Don, just kind of stand up. It's hard to see. That's really cool. Yeah. So you can see the logo, like kind of by his chest and stuff. That's really cool.
Yes, I'll be wearing this to the park. Yeah, I mean, it's I have worn the t-shirt. So a lot of times though, I'm not, as I've started adapting, several years ago to the Hawaiian shirts. So that's one of the reasons why, I'm not wearing the Tower Topics t-shirt all the time. But the rare times that I do wear a t-shirt, yeah, I've worn it to Kings Island.
So when death row inmates get the firing squad, how they tie them to a chair and then they put a thing around their neck and it hangs like a bullseye right above their heart. When I'm at the park, I kind of feel like that's my bullseye when I'm wearing the Tower Topics t-shirt. I'm honestly
I'll be wearing this Hawaiian shirt when we do a Tower Topics meetup at the park. Ryan's getting one of these shirts too. He will wear it that same day.
Yeah. We'll have a Tower Topics meeting luau. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Like, what should we say? Like, oh, if you got a Hawaiian shirt, wear that, and then that could be like our community thing.
Yeah, that could be.
Because you can get. I mean, I bought some at the recommendation of your wife, Don, at Kohl's, and they were like $20 each. But then I figured out if you just wear them for like novelty, you can get them on Amazon for like $3. Not the most comfortable things, but for fun. Miss Mandy 1983 said the fog was so bad during Haunt. I hope it's not in the budget this year.
It's hit or miss with that some days, Sometimes it's the wind kind of makes it a little bit difficult. Other times because of the temperature and that it'll just hang there and becomes a problem. So it's kind of hit or miss with how the fog's going to be on any given night.
But I want to illustrate this for you. I want to demonstrate it. Miss Mandy, you're wishing for budget cuts. There's your monkey's paw. Because be careful what you wish for, especially in today's world, because no fog may mean like, oh, we don't have a budget for fog. Let's just not do Haunt. Ribs and Bacon, the most delicious person in this room right now, said, so what happened with Kings Island's partnership with Camp Cedar? It didn't last very long.
No, it didn't. It was just one of those things where, just different visions for each side on what that one. It was more of a marketing partnership from Kings Island. It wasn't like an ownership thing. It was more of a marketing type thing, but just, different ideas on what they thought the park should be doing, based on what the park could do and all that. So it just, something that didn't work out.
Abe the Adams. I'm so sorry, I'm butchering the name, but Don, do you think that will bring back Phantom Theater? There's a big fan base and want the ride back at Kings Island.
You'd have to have somebody in the corporate office and the planning and design in that. And there's not a lot of them left that, would champion that and push for it and be able to sell to leadership why it's a good idea to put Phantom Theater back in Kings Island. And I don't think right now they have that person in place that would champion that, not only at the corporate level but also at the park level. You'd have to have somebody that would fight for that. I think if this was 3 or 4 years ago, I think there would have been the right people in place to push and possibly make that happen. But that's not the case anymore.
I honestly think, like, in a perfect world, and I'm saying like back in the good, like back in like the Robbie Knievel days and stuff, when like there was a local marketing team and they had their finger on the pulse and stuff. Just imagine you run Phantom Theater, like Phantom Theater Encore. You're like, oh wow, there is a market for this. So you have time to make that decision. You run it for the second year, and then at the last show, they announce the ride's coming back the next year, and that's what the new attraction's going to be.
Yeah, I think there was a time where the people were in place that could have happened, but now the park doesn't have really any real say in what they're going to be getting. And at the corporate office, when you look at who's there and that, most of them have never even heard of Phantom Theater. So I think that makes it tough for that attraction to come back.
Did you see the great deal that they have for pass perks right now, where if you visit Dorney Park 5 times, you get a free bring a friend ticket to Kings Island? That's wild. That is crossover marketing like I've never seen before.
I saw that, yes. I think it's on our X, in fact.
This is just from C. Opinion on hot dogs and mac and cheese.
Hot dogs and mac and cheese, yeah, it's good. It's a good combination. I'm having that after our show here tonight.
Sweet. I'm in favor as well. I think the park has good mac and cheese, by the way. Some of the best.
Yes, it does.
Ben H said, do you think that any of the Six Flags parks could get a trackless ride in the future? I would love to see more indoor attractions using technology.
Yes.
I think right now that's expensive, but that could be par for the course here in 10 years.
Yeah, I think so.
Hot take from Frankenberry, but you guys got to be nice to him because he wrote us a song. I don't think I'd worry about Monster all that much. I wouldn't think it would be as expensive or big of a deal to refurb as a coaster or something. I think you're right, but every penny counts,
It does. Yep.
C said, does anyone else write Don Helbig and Tony Clark fanfics? There's got to be a subreddit. Like fan fiction.
Not that I'm aware of.
It's got to be on Reddit somewhere. Our field reporter said Haunt will probably be a flop because of budget cuts too. Noah, you are being so negative today. Haunt is the only thing that could potentially be good because they might be upcharging for the mazes. They're working with Plague Productions. They're going to have a Conjuring maze, and from what we're hearing, it's going to be two mazes that they're going to do. So we'll see. KDR said, I got a Hawaiian shirt last week in Don's honor.
All right.
I should also point out that when we said our favorite time was Winterfest as well, she called us copycats, and now she's saying she's buying a shirt in your honor. So yeah. I see a little.
I think that was something that they're very comfortable to wear, the Hawaiian shirts. I know you started wearing them every now and then, Ryan, when we first started doing Tower Topics. Now you don't really do that too much, but I got my son-in-law. I got him a couple years ago, started on Hawaiian shirts. That's all he wears now. I mean, they're just so comfortable.
Yeah. Don, you ready for a name you didn't expect to see today?
Yeah.
Flight of Taylor said, Flight of Fear. Ooh. Flight of Fear with a capital F is better than Flight of Fear with the lowercase f. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but Taylor, I will tell you, you and I are absolutely on the same page with Flight of Fear. I love the theme. I love the ride. I haven't gotten to really communicate with you at all, but did you see how it was redone this year? It's better than it looks since '96. It's so awesome. But I hope you're doing well.
I mean, it looks great when you walk into that building. They really did a great job, and I think that pre-show part of it there in that building looks better than it ever has. Great to have Taylor on board here. We miss her questions that we used to get.
Yeah, back in the attractions group days. Aaron Parsons said, if KI does an upcharge for the new Haunt maze, what are your guesses for how much the upcharge will be?
Well, I think it would depend on if it's rolled out to every single maze or it was just one or two. I think if it's every single maze, I think you'd be looking at around $25. That's what it was at the Six Flags parks. I went to the one at Six Flags Great America, and it was $25.
I think that if it's the two mazes, it'll be $10. If it's the
It's
two new
just two, it'd
mazes,
be 10. Yeah, it'd be 10. And then, but I think that they have to be careful though, because they have to make sure if they rolled it out and they had 6 or 7, indoor mazes, that all of them, were going to be properly staffed, and they'd have to make sure that it was worth the $25. Now, if they just did one or two, it's like productions, and it's 5 for one or 10 for for both. I think as a pilot, to see if that's going to work in the market, then I think that would be a fair price.
if it's a quality product, I mean, if it's the same stuff they always do but different, then no, that's going to be definitely a step back. But if it's higher quality, and
you can't charge for Killmart and have 2 scare actors in there.
Yeah. The attractions group, who's stalking us again, said Paramount had a separate gate for Fear Fest. Will they try this with Haunt someday soon?
No, I don't see that happening.
I think that's we're contrasting ourselves a little bit. We're contradicting because with this statement, but you can't charge for what you were given out free before.
No, not when it's been 18 years too. That's the other thing about it, because Haunt in 2007 was kind of an elevated experience when they changed the name, the branding, and everything of it. And at that time, it was going to be a separate gate. And then there was so much backlash right away that it only took about 48 hours to kind of back off of that and just keep it included with park admission.
Well, if I recall, it was going to be 2007. Was that the year of when it became Haunt? Was it 2007?
Yes. Yeah, in August of 2007. We had already announced that Fear Fest was coming back and everything, and then we get the notification from the corporate office. No, we're going to elevate you now to Halloween Haunt. We want something that's more intense. We want something more over the top. We want something where no one and nothing is off limits. So let's push the boundaries. So at that point in time, let's charge for it. And then we quickly found out that was there was a lot of backlash when we kind of suggested that it would be a separate gate.
Well, I remember that it was originally announced that 2007 would be an upcharge. There was backlash, and they said, okay, this year will be included, but next year it's going to be an upcharge, which is far more fair. But then that was backpedaled as well.
Just never did it. Yeah, it was just not going to make sense to do that. I mean, the formula works the way it is. It's like Soak City. It works. I know there's been some discussion about making all the water parks a separate gate. That's not going to work. And then they were like, well, if you got Prestige, you'd still get it free. Well, that's not going to work. Well, we'll give it the gold, silver, and Prestige. Well, that's 95% of your people going there anyway. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I know there was discussion about it though.
I made this prediction on one of the shows for the Haunt Mazes, and feel free to drop in the comments for those of you who are in the chat if you think that I'm full of it or not. But if this doesn't go well, if they elevate it and it really is this great experience and people are happy and stuff, then mazel tov to them. It'll be fine. But if they make it so it's like a little bit better, what's going to happen is it's going to be a lot like Dinosaurs Alive, where everybody has to pay. And then a couple years later, gold and Prestige get in for free. And then a couple years later, silver, let's throw them in there too. Then a couple years later, it's just free again.
Yeah. If Taylor's still in the room there, I know you were recently at King's Dominion. What were your thoughts on Rapterra?
But we're very much behind in the chat. So Taylor, we will get to you if you do respond. Logan Lipper, member for 8 months. Thank you, Logan. He said, can you make Hawaiian shirts available for purchase? Maybe a member exclusive option to purchase.
Yes, we can do that.
We're working on members only merchant. I know I promised that a long time ago. We're going to have a merchandise store. We're going to have some merchandise that's only available to members. Right now, the only exclusive thing is the t-shirt that Gold and Prestige get, which the design is awesome, by the way. I don't know if Jacob Fix is in here, but he always wears his Prestige shirt and it looks so good. Makes him so handsome, as if he's not handsome anyway. Girl Meets Coaster said, when KI gets a new thrill coaster, probably in the next few years, what manufacturer do you think it will come from? I'm hoping for Vekoma.
That'd be my vote. I think that they've become kind of the manufacturer of choice for a lot of parks now. There's a good reason for that. The rides are reliable. So yeah, I think Vekoma would be who my vote would go to.
So Flight of Terror Taylor got back to you. She said Rapterra was great, better in the front than in the back. Was having problems with the heat. Ended up getting evac my first ride, but we got a couple more rides later. I heard it's like rougher in the back than in the front.
It is.
So
yeah, well, my experience. Yeah, my experience was the first, maybe 3 or 4 rows that it's pretty comfortable on both sides. And then the further back you go, especially on the right-hand side, it was a little bit bumpy and not as enjoyable as it is more toward the front.
Frankenberry said, my son Lane finally got his Flight of Fear credit this year, and he absolutely loved it. I thought it would be a little rough for him, but he was all about it, LOL. It's not bad when you're little. When you're a kid, it's when you get to be 6 foot tall. That's when it gets rough.
Yeah, I just got a text from somebody that's at Holiday World, and they said, hey, no ice issues here. And they got a picture showing, everything with ice.
Well, this is what's funny. We don't really hide the ball. We're both pretty close with the Cook family, the owners of Holiday World, and we talked to them last time we were down there together. Like, listen, Kings Island has the drink plan, and they're always out of ice. You guys have free drinks for everybody. You're never out of ice. Like, how do you do it? And they're like, we just got a person that's responsible for that. They come up with the plan. They do it. They make sure the ice is full. They make sure that everything is stocked and it's good.
They also just sent me a picture too, and they said they have a picture of them with the blue ice cream from Holiday World, and they said, thanks for the recommendation. It's so good. You were right.
You know what? I was going to try the blue ice cream there, and I never did. We sat in front of it, but then we were screwing around, like recording stuff, like as a joke, and we forgot.
We did, but yeah, no, it's really good. I did a piece on theme parks by Don about the comparison. Holiday World's blue ice cream, Kings Island's blue ice cream. Who has the best, and had an honest assessment. And I said Holiday World's, was better. And so this person that just texted me, they agreed with my article. That's nice to hear that someone thought I was right.
Speaking of Holiday World, Beach Cliff Studios, who we met there, Rapterra is too bumpy on the outside seats. Again, that's the assessment we're hearing. So for those of you who've ridden both, which one is better? Is Thunderbird or Rapterra better? Because Rapterra has the stats.
That's another one that I did a recent blog on too, and I just the Thunderbird versus Rapterra comparison, very in depth about each coaster. I talked about what the the highlights of each one was, and which one I gave the edge to.
C said, Don, what kind of wig are you getting for the 4th of July?
What kind of what?
Wig.
A wig.
Like a clown wig, or like a toupee, or
I'll bring back my Greg Brady look that I had it for most of the 1980s when I had the black curly hair. Maybe I'll do that. Bring back the curls.
I'm trying to quickly find a picture. Oh, wait a minute.
There was a guy that worked on the racer, and when it would rain, back then they would run the rides no matter how hard it was raining, as long as it wasn't lightning and that. And I would come back in and the curls and stuff and on my head, and he would always say, with the rain, you got nappy hair.
Nappy hair?
What are you looking for?
A picture of you with your old hair back when you had hair.
You don't need to show that. Nobody needs to see that. Sure I do,
but this is a famous picture. See? Like, that's not you with like your biggest fro, but
No, that was a picture from 1987. So I told my wife, and I said when I pass, I want that to be the photo that kind of gets used, on on social media and everything for her to alert people that I passed.
I got a text message outside of the chat for some reason, even though we have a perfectly good chat going on with our friend Will offering to give you his powdered wig. I should point out
Powdered
that
wig, okay.
like the founding fathers had, because he's a
Yeah.
monarchist. So he wanted you to have his powdered wig. You can't take it with you, right?
That's right.
Spike said, going to Holiday World August 1st with Gawk. Going to be a great time. We get night ERT on Voyage. Oh, enjoy.
That's phenomenal with the night ERT on that ride. Great night ride. You know, it's like the Beast, two different experiences. One during the day, one at night.
Night's
a lot of
better.
track work. Yeah, a lot of track work over the winter. So if you haven't been there yet this year, it's running better than it ever has. It's a lot smoother than it ever has been. So, you know, Gravity Group, you know, kind of helped do their thing with this too.
Logan Lipper said, Wrath of Rakshasa was bumpy on the edge too. Great ride, though. Shakaka.
That was one of the rides that after that had its media day, and that a lot of people were asking, you know, what's happening with B&M, because lately some of the rides, you know, they mentioned Rapterra was a little bumpy. This one, a little bit rough in certain spots and that. So they were wondering what the problem is with B&M lately.
I wish we knew. I wish we knew what was up with B&M, because I've heard the ball thrown around where, oh, it's Walter and whatever the other one's names, their sons are in control and they're not as good. And I've also heard like, oh, they had a change of management at Claremont Steel. I don't think it's any of that. I think that B&M, in order to remain competitive, has to use less steel, and they need to have bigger deflection tolerances. And that's why. Like,
what are your thoughts on if, you know, because we've seen a lot of the, you know, the budget cuts and stuff when they bid out, you know, for who's going to erect the rides, that they're taking the lowest bidder instead of somebody that has built a lot of these.
I don't know. I hope there's some engineers in the crowd that can maybe speak to this. I don't have a strong opinion on that, because I don't know how much the erector would have to do with how bumpy the finished product would be. But one thing I will tell you is, if you look at like Valraven, I think was the start of it, because Valraven, you get to the top and you stop and the thing deflects. Every steel coaster, every wood coaster deflects, like it shakes, because if not, it would be brittle and it would crack.
Right.
Like we all know that. But this thing deflects to the point where you can see it from the ground, and like you can't see that at Kings Island or, you know, any of these parks, and like even Orion doesn't do that. But
right,
it's been ever since then, and I think that B&M, in order to keep the prices down, to be competitive with your Intamins and your Vacomas, especially nowadays, they allow more tolerance with the deflection, so they have to use less steel because steel is so expensive, and that's why you're getting this stuff that shakes so much.
right.
Tractions Group Podcast said, Holiday World is an incredible experience. 500 drone show with pyro and a complete administrative staff. And clean!
That drone show is phenomenal, and I'm looking forward to getting down there, you know, this summer to check it out. Saw it multiple times last year. Just unbelievable.
Christopher Knight said, with the shortened trains this year, how likely will we be to lose the Kings Island Miami Valley Railroad?
You worry about that because it's one of the most expensive rides in the park to operate. You know, so somebody that's a big train fan like me, you know, yeah, I worry about that being one of those rides they would look at the bottom line and just say people can walk to Silk City. One of the individuals that was involved in making the decision to remove the train at King's Dominion, you know, they're part of the management team, you know, so it's not like they haven't removed a train before. So I hope it doesn't come to that. But it is, you know, it's sad to see, you know, what they call the baby trains with just the 3 coaches. And, you know, you just wonder if that's one of those rides that they would just, if they're trying to, you know, with the budget cuts and they just look at rides to cut, they just think that's an easy one because it's not really, you know, anymore. It is transportation for the most part to Silk City. So I could see that being one that, you know, could be something they discuss doing. I hope not. I don't think so, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Kendra Lamb said, I missed the campground. I think it was a great extension to the park. You know, the thing about the campground that I liked was it gave the park a resort feel. You know,
Yes, it
you don't
did.
have that anymore. The park seems like it's standalone. You know, and they've sold off all that property and stuff. So I guess there is something to that. But if they had cabins, I'd probably stay there. Like I'd do that once a year or so, being a local.
Right.
Christopher Knight said, Ryan and Dawn, Beast versus Voyage.
Well, I the longest time I would have said, the Beast. And after the track work, even last year, just riding it and there for Hollywood Nights, and then again on National Roller Coaster Day, the Tremless rides and that. Uh, I gave the edge to the Voyage, and then after riding it again this year, that just reaffirmed for me that that was number one over the Beast.
Yeah, with how it's running now, it's easily better than the Beast.
It's relentless. I mean, there's no nonstop or anything with it. I mean, from the time you leave that lift hill, until you get back in the brake run into the station, I mean, it is relentless.
Spike said, I think B&M are more value engineered now to make them even more marketable. Looser tolerances to build them the same as always would be cost prohibitive. So we're on the same page with that. I think that they're trying to use as least steel as possible. And as a result of that, that's why you're getting the deflection. So with that being said, it probably doesn't affect maintenance. It probably doesn't affect safety. And I'm saying probably because I'm not an engineer, so I'm not qualified to make an assertion on that. But yeah, unfortunately for something like Repterra, where it does that launch, it bounces so hard that does affect the ride experience. Justin Y said, 12 Days of Christmas overlaid during the Winterfest is one of my favorites. Hope they never get rid of the train.
No, it would be a very sad day for me if the train was removed.
So, Justin, I that's my least favorite part of Winterfest, but what I will tell you is this. Look up Home for the Holidays from 2005 Winterfest and what they did with the train then. And that was a full-on show. That was produced by Jack Rouse Associates, and they had actors and they had singers and stuff. And so basically you happen to be caught on a train with a soldier that's coming home for the holidays from World War II. So it was like a chilling experience. It really was. Compare that to what they have now, and you might feel a little bit differently. But I'm glad you enjoy it. I think 12 Days of Christmas would be perfect for the antique cars. I think that's what they should do with that, and they should do something more with the train.
I agree with you, Ryan.
Frankenberry said cost synergies.
Cost synergies, yes. One of our favorite phrases, right?
Yeah. Cost synergies. You just wouldn't understand. That's the t-shirt. That's what it's going to be. SVT Cobra said, if they remove the train, I will have to vote with my wallet. Dollywood passes will be in our future. Well, there's going to be a train there.
Yes. The best, the pinnacle of steam train rides in the industry.
That's the best one. I can't believe I didn't know really about Cedar Points. There's just coal-fired, so it's got that awesome smell to it. You got Boneville and stuff. So I had ridden the train, but not the leg that goes through Boneville. So I didn't even know about Boneville till 2 years ago.
That's really cool.
That's so neat. I really like it. Let's find another comment. Got a lot of people saying, I hope they don't get rid of the train, but I feel like we talked about that.
Yeah, we're not saying it's going away, but like I said, I think that I worry about that, something that because of what it costs to operate it, that they would look at.
Spike said, mock extreme spinner in the Vortex plot.
There's a lot of love for something like that. I see that come up a lot.
Medic 302, Don, have you ever visited Adventureland in Iowa?
No, I wanted to go last year. Then I had an event with my eye that I wasn't able to make that trip. I was going to go in early September, and it just was something I wasn't able to do. So hopefully, I'm able to circle back and get that in.
Flight of Taylor said Dorney should get Carnival Flight of Fear with SFA closing. She means is it Riddler's Revenge there? Or they might call it something else, the outdoor version of Flight of Fear, which is completely inferior to our Flight of Fear, I might add, because we have the better theme.
Yeah. It's possible.
I think the ride's too old because
it is old. It is old, but that's one that, you know, it still might be salvageable and worth putting somewhere else.
I hope so. I do like the ride experience. It is painful, like the train suck. Like, okay, but the theme, the indoor part, like it's so mystical. Even now, like almost 30 years later, yeah, it's still like, I don't know. Catherine Ricketts said, I've been unable to come see the Bubble Show. Do you think they'll extend it this year?
I don't know because there's commitments for the Bubble Show at other places. King's Dominion's getting it. So I don't think they would extend it. I think they would have announced that already.
When did they announce it last year? There was
still a couple of weeks to go. You know, it was not too deep into the run of it to let people know that it was going to be around because it was so popular in that. But you got to look at it too this year too. I mean, it's a different world that they're living in, and you know, do they have the money even to extend them for another couple of weeks?
Yeah. Well, and we're both under the belief that the intention was to have them for, what was it, 4 weeks all along, and then they made the decision to market it for a certain amount of time and then be like, oh, we just extended it just to kind of get another push out of it.
Yeah, because those, you know, the different family members, you know, there's the Bubble Shows at Dollywood, they're doing the one at King's Dominion, and that they keep busy, you know, for most of the year. So as soon as this show wraps up, you know, this guy's got somewhere else to be.
Assuming it's him, if it's Danny Yang, but he's got like sister.
Yeah, they got different ones, but even like this guy's got somewhere else to go, whether it's staying at, you know, going to King's Dominion or some other place.
We're on like Broadway. They get like an off-Broadway show. Michael Isham said King's Dominion already announced the Bubble Show starts there on the 12th, a week from Saturday, so it's unlikely it'll be extended. Yeah, if it's the same guy, there's no way.
If it's the same guy, right.
Frankenberry said, would have liked to see Herschend take over Six Flags America and see what they could have done with it. I mean, the thing though is, I think that if they thought there was any interest in that park, they would have tried to sell it. Like,
yeah, it's always been in a bad location too. I mean, just it's not the easiest place to get to. You know, for just, you know, for whatever reason, since 1974, you know, it's never been a park that has drawn great crowds. I mean, it has its fans in that, but it's never done as well as they thought that it would.
Yeah, kind of like King's Dominion, where they thought that was going to be the big park between it and Kings Island, and then it, like, just a bunch of little mistakes. Its location, the direction it faced, how it was designed, just really just affected it, and that's why it's Kings Island's little brother.
Yep, nice park though. I really like Kings Dominion. A lot of really good things there.
I love Kings Dominion. Chris Sickton said, Don, I'm not sure if you've given a health update lately. How are you doing and feeling?
You know, I mean, the left eye is, you know, very minimal, you know, with the vision. That's not ever going to get better. That happened on August 30th last year, so it's hard to believe it's almost been a year already. The right eye I was just getting to where my brain was adapting, you know, and everything was looking like normal. You know, I wasn't noticing that the left side everything was blurry and the right side was clear. It kind of like worked itself out. And then in early March, I had an explosion of floaters in my right eye, and that is really distracting. There are days that, depending on where the floaters kind of decide to settle, that sometimes it's right over my eye and everything's clouded, and there's other times it's off to the right and I can see okay, and other times it's down low and, like, as long as I'm looking more up, I can see. So it's just a day-to-day thing, and I don't know. I mean, there's hope. My eye doctor, feels that eventually it's going to go away. They're a little bit thinner now with the floaters, so it's almost like looking through cobwebs, sometimes. So it's not fun. It's been a challenge. It's not easy to do the podcast because it's so there's days that we're talking about, like, show notes and stuff that I can't read it, in terms, so I have to remember what I'm supposed to say and stuff. So appreciate you asking, but I'm resilient, and I'm going to keep doing what I do, and it's going to take more than some vision issues to derail me.
This guy didn't have much to say, but I wanted to point out that he was an hour late. FYE Coaster said, "Good morning," or sorry, "Good evening, happy Wednesday." Well, Josh,
Yes.
thank you for finally making it out. Now,
I was worried about you.
Yeah, we were worried about you, man. SVT Cobra said the community Tower Topics is built as nothing short of impressive. Every time we are at the park, which is often, we hear guests talking about Tower Topics. You guys should feel good about what you have built. Thank you. That means like a ton.
Yeah, we appreciate that. No, we do feel good about what we built, and this is something that we knew there would come a time we'd want to do a podcast about Kings Island. It was all about timing. We had the name, the logo, everything, picked out months before I ever left Kings Island. So we knew that as soon as I left there, that was going to be something that we were going to do. We knew it was going to be a slow build in that. But no, we appreciate everybody that, listens to the show, subscribes to the show, interacts with us on social media, says hi when they see us at the park, and not just at Kings Island. I mean, I've been, at Dollywood, Holiday World, Six Flags Great America, Cedar Point. People come up and let me know that they really enjoy the show, and that means a lot.
Miss Mandy 1983 said, "I like seeing the new Prestige members." Oh, trust me, I do too. I get excited. I don't get a notification when we get a new member, but I do check that on the app. Sorry, I've got the hiccups right now.
Ryan will text me right away and let me know every time that there's a new member, and we're excited about that, and we appreciate the support.
But yeah, we really appreciate you've been a supporter from, I think, the beginning. I think you're an original member, so greatly appreciate that. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm gonna put these together, Don, because both of these are for you, and they both have the same sentiment. Frankenberry said, "Keeping you in my prayers, Don." So thank you, Frankenberry.
Thank you.
And Ghoster Coaster said, "Keep fighting the tough stuff, Don. Keeping you on my thoughts."
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like I said, I'm resilient. I find ways to, scratch and claw my whole life to do things, and nothing was ever handed. And this is just another one of those things that you just look at it and you just say, okay, these are the cards that I've been dealt. How do I make the best of the situation? And that's what I've been trying to do.
So, okay, this is going to spark a conversation here. But Frankenberry said it's only going to get bigger. And we're talking about the podcast. If the park was smart, they'd want to be on the right side of it. Which, okay, if they were smart, they would want to be on the right side of it. And Don and I have discussed this at length. And they've got the content creator policy and all that stuff. So what would you guys want? And I feel like I know the answer, but would us going to Media Day be worth to you us having to tame down our opinions or not talk about negative stuff if we feel like it's warranted? Like how do you guys feel about that? Obviously the sacrifice that we make is that we can't have Chef Perez on. We can't have Tony Carvellano on or Tony Clark or any of those people because they don't want to work with us. But the reason for that is we're doing what we think is brutal honesty.
Yeah, there would have been a way to, to make it a win-win situation for both sides. There's a podcast that they do it on, Universal Orlando, and they have a great relationship with the PR and the marketing team in that. And, it's a win for both sides. And that could have been the situation. But we pretty much knew that wasn't going to be something that, they were going to want to work with us. And we also knew that if we were going to have credibility with our listeners, that, we couldn't be shills. We had to pretty much, our obligation was to share with you what's going on, what we're seeing, what we're hearing. And, it may come across as negative, but it's the reality of the situation. We don't make stuff up. We're seeing it firsthand. People are sending us pictures and things. So I think the way we decided to go about it is that our credibility, with our listeners, our integrity and everything was more important than having that relationship with the park so we could go to media days.
Honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way, because with this, it's like, there have been times when, like, okay, they had Siren's Curse Media Day, and it's like, we know some of the people that went, and they're Six Flags sycophants. They praise everything they do, and it's like you look at it and you're like, we reach 500 times what these people do, but at the same time, like I'm kind of glad that doesn't bother me, because I don't have to worry about the content of the show. We never have to have the discussion of, should we cut this out because they're going to be upset about it. It's never anything like that,
No, and that's the only way you can have credibility with your audience, is if you're not shilling for, or worried about, well, if we say this, they're not going to invite us to media day. And there's people that they go to these media days and, they glow about it on social media because they know the park's looking to see what they say, but then they'll send messages and they'll say, well, it was okay. I didn't really like this. I didn't like that, but they won't put it out there into the social space because they know what the ramifications are going to be on it. Now, what happens when they do that is nobody believes them when they go to these events, because they see right through that and they know, well, they're just, they were just invited because they were going to talk positively about it. And that's something that we want to be positive about everything. Let's just, be clear about that. We'd love to be raving about everything. But that's just not reality. I mean, there are things that the park needs to, has slipped on, things that they need to be better with. And, and I think that our audience, they've seen the same things that we talk about.
Yeah. So they're like the people that, we're talking about, like the season pass group in a lot of cases, in our comments in a lot of cases, on KI Central in a lot of cases. And, I'm to the point now in life where I don't want to argue with people online, because you're just both dumb if you do that. But like I saw on KIC, somebody posted that they feel as though, kind of like what we've expressed, that Kings Island's editions, including 2020 and on up, have been like good enough. And like the person responded like, and it was so funny because they drove holes in their own story. They were like, yeah, Orion, I would have preferred for it to be like Fury on steroids, but it's still a good ride. And Adventure Port, yeah, it's small and it's not as good as Aeronautical Landing, but I mean, it's an upgrade. And River Racers, like, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would have wanted a really nice one like Holiday World has, but this one has more capacity. And it's like, if you're grasping at straws trying to find the positives, you're doing it wrong, first of all. But also it's like there's no credibility to it. Like, had they said, you know what, I know a lot of people have complaints about Orion, I think it's a great ride. But if it was like, yeah, of course I would want something bigger and better like everybody else has, like, enjoy media day, dude. I hope it was worth your post.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time Kings Island was the gold standard, for everything, and there was high expectations. And then the last couple years, 3-4 years, it started to slide to where it's good enough. We can get away with that. And part of that is because they knew that people are going to renew their passes regardless. We don't really have to do anything. So it makes the decision easier. Is why spend $10 million for an attraction we can get away with just spending $5 million? it's good enough. People are going to renew.
Jacob does everything. He's calling somebody out. He said, Daniel Glosser is a big example. He's a big praiser of river racers, and it's annoying because I know it's not the greatest water coaster. So, okay. Daniel's a friend. I love Daniel. So Daniel, if you're watching, you're great.
Great guy.
But the thing though is he can really get himself. He was really worked up about Snoopy Soapbox Racers too, and how it's like the greatest kids ride ever, and everybody's talking about it and stuff. Don, what was your thing? Like you could hand him a bag of poop and he would think it's the greatest bag of
no,
poop.
I said one time because he was just so over the top on something, and I just said, you could give him a bag of trash, and he'd say it's the best trash ever. But he's optimistic. That's the thing about Daniel. He's just optimistic. Doesn't like the, he looks at the positive on everything, and he's the same way with the sports teams and that he follows. That this is the best team ever. That's the best player ever. That's the best draft pick ever. So I like his optimism. He's passionate. He's excited about stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's it's another one of those ones that you look at, and if you saw him at a media day talking about something because of how he is about everything, you just say, okay, I'm not buying that.
Well, it looks like the vast majority of the pretty much everybody has agreed. We should not go to media days. We should stick with telling the truth. So thank you for affirming what we had already decided. Jacob Fix, thank you so much for this super sticker.
Yeah, the other problem about media days is, I don't anymore, since I don't work at the park and I don't have to be up for the media days. I'm not real excited about getting up at like 4 or 5 in the morning to do those things.
That's my thing too. It's like the only media day I've ever been to outside of Kings, I've been to other stuff, but outside of like Kings Island for theme parks was Good Gravy's media day, and I just went with you just for kicks.
But the thing about it is this, there's like last year with Bobcat, Six Flags Great Escape. I could have gone to a media event, but I didn't. And then I wrote it, a few weeks later, and I just thought, I don't have to be the first one to do something. If I was going to write a story about it, I don't have to do the breaking news thing. I just want to take that story and make it my own, and just do it in a different or maybe even a better way with that. And if that means I write 3 or 4 weeks later, so be it. That's just the way it is.
Ghoster Coaster said, I think I agree here, actually. They don't like truthful criticism. Honesty is good for the park. We get this poor management across the chain if we don't say honest things and keep buying passes, etc. 100%, my friend. 100%.
Yeah. And that was one of the things too with me, when I was doing the PR for Kings Island, even I worked, I wasn't a show for the park. I remember the one year, Ryan, we had a bunch of new shows, and there was one that was just terrible. So when I was talking to the media and stuff, I was the ones that I saw and knew that the guests would like it. I mentioned them and, go into detail about it. And I would say, and we also have, and I named the show, which was in this facility. And, people kind of knew what I was doing there, that I wasn't going to say something was great when it wasn't, but I referenced it because we have it, in the kindest way that I could was, and we also have this.
That show wasn't that bad, by the way. I know what you're talking about. I kind of enjoyed it.
That's because you got brought up on stage one time. That's why you liked it.
But that's okay. That's probably it. All right. Logan Lipper said, I'm going to get one more random membership at the end of this. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's been a great show with some great questions. Logan is he's Tower Topics official Santa Claus.
That's right.
Or like a Chris Kringle. Let's see here. Everybody's talking and having their own conversations in here, which I love, but it makes it hard to find comments. But don't stop doing that.
Hate the headset; it messes up my hair.
Yeah. Ski Bammer said, even if KI goes downhill further, at least we'll always have the memories from King's Dominion Memorial Day fireworks. The crew there was amazing. Yeah, they were a great crew. Well, so what you missed though. So Ski Bammer was on a pyro crew with me at King's Dominion years ago. And we shot stuff off. I don't think we did the Eiffel Tower that year when you were there. I think that was the next year. Anyway, but what we both missed was the following year when they did fireworks at 7 p.m. They did nighttime fireworks during the day. And there's videos online of just confused people wondering why they're doing fireworks during the day. Christopher Knight said, I wish River Racers was not a racing water slide. They could have taken the slides from both sides and made it something longer, maybe even a tube lift or a conveyor belt. They could have taken that money and done anything with it. Come on.
All right. What else we got?
Frankenberry said, they're missing the point. People who see TV commercials are just there. People who watch theme park social media are looking to attend. Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about this, because this is, if you're talking about Tower Topics specifically, and I'm arrogant, so I'm just going to assume you are. We did an episode on the cakes, like the cakes that have like the roller coasters on them and stuff. And it was like kind of like the August, like midsummer, kind of like there wasn't anything to talk about because Han wasn't announced yet. And it was 8 o'clock closes. So it was like a filler episode, and it did not do well. Like sometimes we have bottle episodes. All right. Well, so we did an episode on those cakes, and I was talking to an employee in there like months later, and I was just looking at stuff, just killing time. And I said, hey, do these cakes sell very well? And they were like, well, we used to sell a few of them, but then some podcast about Kings Island talked about them. So now we sell like a ton of them. So yes, we do put our thumb on the scale at the park. Same with the bubble wands. Noah, if you're still out there, you're responsible for a bunch of revenue for the park. But
pub burger.
The pub burger. But on that same token, I wonder how much I've cost them in Prestige Pass sales, unfortunately. Attractions Group Podcast said, does KI have a special fireworks display coming on the 4th? Yeah. They have a 20-minute show.
Ryan's going to be there.
I'll be there. FYE Coaster said, I'm a hardcore KI fan, though, like the rest of us. I will always be a pass holder, good or bad. As long as the park is open, I will be there. They are counting on people like you, Mr. Josh. They are counting on that. So Jacob Fix, to give context, wants to get married on Orion, I think, and wants to have a bunch of Tower Topics people there on the train. I offer to officiate it because I am a minister. Call me Father Ryan, Reverend Ryan, in Ohio. And he said, Ryan, I've reached out to the park and it's been cricket so far. I've also noticed they stopped replying to my comments on their posts. Well, Jacob, you made the mistake of being associated with Dawn.
Yeah, that's going to hurt you.
Miss Mandy, 1983, said, we're going to Kings Island for the first time in weeks. I'm going to try to have an open mind. I hope you have a great time.
Yeah, that's what you have to do,
Frankenberry said, well, with the Prestige Pass, that's not a you problem. That's a bad product problem. They don't see it that way, I'm sure.
There's some parks where it's really, really valuable. King's Dominion, their Prestige Lounge, it's fantastic. I mean, if I lived in Virginia, I would have the Prestige Pass.
Oh yeah. If King's Dominion was my park, then I would absolutely have it. Knott's Berry Farm too is another good one. I'll tell you this, and I've said this on the show before, but it's really, for me, the sourness is how they handled it. Because, as you know, it was supposed to go out to 12 people. The email went out to like 300,000. A bunch of people bought it. It ended up not being the product that they promised. Well, had they sent out an email afterward and said, look, thanks for buying the Prestige Pass. That email wasn't supposed to go out. This is what you're actually going to get for it. If you're not happy with that, you can go to guest services by the end of the month and downgrade. That would have been fine. I would have completely understood. I'm not sure if I would have downgraded or not. Like that's a little bit hindsight kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how I would have reacted, but I wouldn't have been like so sour over it. But the fact that they tried to like quietly change the language on the website, that's just so slimy to me. Coaster Spot said, I enjoy all your criticisms, but at least your home park isn't mine. In the last 2 weeks, we've had Roaring Rapid, Log Flume, and El Toro all go down, most likely for the majority of the summer. Ooh, it must be Six Flags.
That's tough to take, yeah. Especially El Toro.
Yeah, El Toro has been problematic for like 3 years, hasn't it?
They had some different issues.
Jacob Pick said, well, then we'll have to do something front and center of I Street with you and Don there. Well, we're willing to work with you however you want.
Whatever you want to do, we'll do it. We'll be there.
Yeah, we'll do it. And they could get vicious though. They could, like, because technically part of the policy, the behavior policy, is that you can't stop on the midway. So they could be like, we could have a group of like your friends and family, and like you with this ring, I thee wed, and you put the ring on. And move it along, people. I could see that. Don, this is from Attractions Group Podcast. Don, have you ever told the story of how Bob Ross riding Orion came about on this podcast?
No, we have not. There was a video, some park in Europe that put teddy bears on their roller coaster, and it kind of went viral. And someone at Kings Island thought that would be kind of a fun thing to do with Bob Ross, and asked, the different departments you would need, safety and operations and that. Can we do this? And it sounded good in theory till we got all the plush back there, and then how small they really were and how they wouldn't sit up straight in the seats and that. So we had to use just hundreds of zip ties and, trying to make sure that they stayed in. But it ended up being a really good, video. It did go viral. There was, a lot of national coverage with that. Some of the major networks like CBS, News and that, picked it up. So, it was definitely worth doing, but it was an idea that was stolen, as most ideas are.
Yeah, just like Elvis stole his music from the black man. It's me, David T. So good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for the great streams concerning Kings Island. Well, if you like our streams, you'll love our podcast.
Yes.
Right here on this channel. Attractions Group. Any Bob Rosses flying out?
No, but they would kind of lean a little bit, off to the side. Some of the heads would be like, bobbing down on that. So we had to do several different runs to make sure we got the footage that they were all kind of in the proper riding position.
So, okay, I've discussed this with you, Don, but I want everybody else's opinion, like, other outsiders and stuff. My concern with the whole Bob Ross thing would be, you got Bob Ross, they're 18 inches tall, they ride, they successfully complete the course, they come back, essentially proving that that object can make its way back. So,
with the help of hundreds of zip ties.
Well, but you don't see that on the video.
No.
So when somebody comes and they want their kid to ride Orion and they're a quarter of an inch too short, and you got some 16-year-old kid saying, sorry, your kid can't ride, they're too short. And they're like, well, Bob Ross can, and he's 18 inches tall. And you're like, oh, it's for safety. Like, I have a feeling that came back to bite him a couple times. Like, I literally saw an.
We did hear about that. Yes. That was a good call out by you. You had concerns over what the feedback would be, and yes, we did experience that.
I want to point out that it wasn't concerns; it's more of a comment because it wasn't my problem. With all due respect.
Yeah, it wasn't your problem, no.
No, I like the idea. I like that it went viral, and honestly, if I was in that, the person that kind of promoted the idea, they wouldn't have thought of something like that. But honestly, if it was me,
No,
and
I
I
mean, it
told
was
it,
one of those things that showed up in there, we were all talking about it, and the office, hey, this was kind of cool with the teddy bears. You see this, we were talking about it. And then a couple of days later, hey, let's do Bob Ross dolls.
yeah, no, on the surface, it is a good idea. But like, if I was in his position and it's like, okay, we can do this, we can go viral, we can promote it. But that means some 16-year-old kid's going to get yelled at by a couple parents. I'd probably do it to be completely to full disclosure. But with that being said, I think that there should have been more of a consciousness of it.
You're not thinking about that at the time, though. I mean, that's the thing. You're not. You're just wanting to get the production going. You're rounding up the Bob Ross dolls. You're working on getting them all in the seats and that, and you don't really think about that.
Looking for something. Frankenberry said, it always amazes me when people get mad when a write-off says it's not safe for your kid to ride. Like, what do you want? To tell them to risk their life for a ride? I see where you're coming from. I really do. But at the same time, and I'm not a parent, so like maybe I would be like super overprotective if I did have a kid. But if the kid is like a quarter of an inch too short, and it's like, no, the difference between successfully completing the circuit and flying out is a quarter of an inch, you've got a design problem on your hands. I think the whole
problem,
for your safety thing is thrown around too much at theme parks.
The problem I have is when a child has ridden something, a dozen times, and then they come back the next week and somebody else says you're not tall enough. So there's an inconsistency on how they were being measured in that. So there's a little bit of that too sometimes where, they show photos, the fun pics. They're on the ride, here's a picture. Why can't they ride today? So you get some of that too.
I remember my good friend and your antagonist, Ronnie, was an area manager, and he said that was a big problem. This for some reason on Flight of Fear, it was really common where he'd get called to it. Not area manager, he's area supervisor. He wasn't full time, but he'd get called for a guest complaint at Flight of Fear. He'd go there. Sorry, your kid's too short, and they'd pull out the on-ride photo they bought. Be like, oh yeah, they wrote it an hour ago. So
yeah.
Let's see here. Jacob Fick said last year at CP, my kids were right at 52-inch mark. We went to Gatekeeper, and they of course wanted to measure them. No problem. They were asking my kids to take off their shoes. What? They asked them to take off their shoes?
Yeah, I've seen that happen before.
Okay. Second part. We looked at each other kind of puzzled. The worker explained how a family tried to stuff chicken tenders in their kids' shoes to make them tall enough. Oh my gosh.
I've seen all kinds of things in people's shoes to try to make them taller.
All right. All right. This is going to be the last one. Frankenberry said, I've seen this happen with Top to Dragstrip, and I rode it several times. And then later in the day, they stopped me and said I was too heavy until I told them I'd been on it all day. I rode Wicked Twister 3 times in a row. And on the 4th time, I was too heavy, too big. That's so weird. But yeah. Okay. So we're going to wrap this up for the night. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight.
90 minutes we got in.
We did. Yeah.
It flew by.
It really did. I really enjoy doing these. It's funny because when we do tower topics, like I'm to the point now where I start to get like psyched up for it, like excited to do it. And, I like doing the live stream with the members. It's a little bit more chill. And like, I feel like we know them and stuff, but I was like so stoked all day to do this live stream with everybody because we get to hear from people like, that we never hear from. So Logan Lipper just gifted another Tower Topics membership. Let's not forget that. I wonder who he gave it to.
Well, the first Wednesday of every month, we will do the live for everybody.
Yeah. So, but if you enjoy these lives, we go live every Wednesday for members, unless it's the first Wednesday of the month in which we go live for everybody. There's a link. I'll put it in the comments if you're interested. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams. Some tiers get free stuff, and you guys have heard me say that a million times over. If you guys are members, thank you so much. This podcast is not cheap to do, and it's getting more and more expensive every time we get bigger, but you guys make it possible. So there's a link that I just put in there if you're interested in becoming a YouTube member. That's if Logan Lipper doesn't gift one to everybody, of course. But
all right, thanks, Logan.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. You're awesome. You guys are so great. This has been so fun. Happy 4th of July. Have a great weekend. If you see us at the park, do not hesitate to come up and introduce yourself. We'd love to hear from all you guys. Have a good night.